Ladies and gentlemen, boys and ghouls, all of our friends, all of our non-binary friends, and everyone on the spectrum and in between, welcome to another episode of the Shutter Show. David, how are you doing today?
You know, I think I'm doing okay.
Good to hear.
I think I'm, I think I'm doing a little all right. First off, I want to say to everybody, we missed you.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while. We wanted to record an episode last week, and so, we decided, we're going to record it on Tuesday, and I don't think there's anything important going on today.
No, did anything happen on Tuesday? I don't recall.
I don't seem to remember there being anything happening.
It seems like there was big national news and something that happened last week that might have... you know what it was? I got a dog.
Yes, you did.
That's right.
Oh, little Freddy.
Yep.
Adorable, stupid Freddy.
Mm-hmm.
I love that dog so much.
Little Freddie Young has joined the family. Yes, the same Freddie Young who was the DP of Lawrence of Arabia, but that wasn't how I planned things. It just worked out that way, and I'm very excited to be giving him now a forever home, and he's a very good boy. I highly suggest you check out my Instagram or Twitter if you want to see, what is now mostly just pictures of my dog.
Yes. But yeah, in all seriousness, we recorded we were hoping to record our episode, but we came in thinking it's 50-50 whether it's going to happen, and then we started imbibing alcohol as results came in, and my wife was with us there, and hoping to see how the episode turned out, but then we're just I don't know how this thing's going to go. And if you haven't guessed it by now, this is a pretty liberal podcast, so we were freaking out that day a little bit. And now we're a little less freaking out.
Still a lot to be done.
Still a lot to be done. It's still 2020 and shit's going on.
We felt that perhaps most people had enough on their docket last week that if we didn't record, you would forgive us.
This didn't seem like the top of the priority list at the time, and just thought maybe a week off for mental health might be the best.
Yeah, and also not necessarily making a monument to the neurotices that was us watching the election results come in. Maybe that was not something we needed to record.
Look back at.
Yep, exactly. So that's why we're here this week. And David, what movie are we talking about this week?
Well, Ken, we're watching a very short film.
Yes.
77 minutes, in fact.
Shortest film we've done so far.
Hailing from the culture of the French, called Them, or Ils. How do you pronounce that? It sounded German when I said it.
Ild, I believe. Ild. And then, it's a French and Romanian. It's a 2006 film. Shot in 2005.
Yeah, shot in Romania, but a French production.
And I'm going to attempt to pronounce the directors' names, and I apologize to anyone who ever took French in high school. I did not. So I believe it is David Moreau and Xavier Palud are the two directors.
Good job.
Thank you very much. And our stars of this movie are, let's see here, Olivia Bonamy and Michael Cohen. Not the same Michael Cohen. I think that's a pretty big distinction. I think I would say this movie would be fascinating if it starred that Michael Cohen. That would make
for much more interesting viewing, I would say.
It would be
sure.
This would make this movie a fascinating document of a different time. Now, I would say with this movie, the number one thing I think about when I think about them is minimalism. It is a movie that stars, I think, 4 people?
6 at best.
Yeah, it's 6 if you include the killers, who are a certain number of actors. They're not really precise at how many intruders they are dealing with. But yeah, it's basically there's an opening with 2 characters, and like the opening of many horror films. Big surprise, both of the people in the opening die. Mm-hmm. And then...
Which seems to be the case for most home invasion horror films.
Definitely
Very rarely, it's sort of like Stranger... this film is constantly compared to Strangers and Funny Games.
Yes.
And so, surprise, surprise, in both those films, nobody gets out alive except for the killers. It's just, that seems to be always the trend for home invasion films, but this one is interesting, I guess, because I started doing some last minute reviewing and research on this, because I don't know a whole lot about Romania. I don't know a whole lot about the Roma people. To be perfectly frank, I don't know a whole lot about the French or France. I've never been, and I don't know.
I'm told their food and cheese is very good.
Yes.
But then again, I'm lactose intolerant, so unfortunately, there's a whole lot of French cuisine which I just can't enjoy. And that's and no, look, if you like a good stinky French cheese, more power to you. I hope you enjoy it. I just
So tasty.
can't. Yeah, I know a decent amount about French film, but the specifics of French culture, particularly with this film, is not something that I knew a whole lot about. However, I will say one thing that I think is incredibly universal with this film is the setup. The directors, when they were starting to develop this film, went out and asked their friends what scares them the most. And they said, someone breaking into my house in the middle of the night. And basically they were like, all right, cool, that's the movie that we're going to make. And these filmmakers, I think, are really, really talented. And it's surprising how little they've done afterwards. They did the Jessica Alba film, I believe it's The Eye is the name of it.
Oh, really? The remake of the Japanese horror film?
Yes. So they did that. And then they've done a couple of other small films. Like the cinematographer as well has done a bunch of like French TV. The cinematographer, his name is Axel Consafro. Again, I'm so sorry that I don't know how to pronounce this. But like his biggest credit really before this was he was a camera assistant on La Haine, which is a pretty infamous French film that is known for being a real rough watch, we will politely say.
What does that translate to?
La Haine? I will look that up. Give me 1 second.
I don't know why, but that brings to mind Top Secret Latrine!
It's hate is what it means.
Very different.
Yeah, it stars Vincent Cassell, who you would know as he's one of the most famous French actors in the world. He is married, or at least was, I don't know if he still is, to Monica Bellucci, so good on you, Vincent. But you would mainly know him as the bad guy from Ocean's 12. The guy, the fox, who did all the capoeira stuff to get through all the lasers and stuff. Yeah, so yeah, that guy legit one of the best French actors in the world.
I would say the next best one would be the gentleman in Leon. Is that the same actor?
No.
No.
That is no, that's not Luc Besson. Luc Besson is the actor. It is
Luc Besson's the director.
Yes. We will look that up too.
Because now I have to know. I absolutely have to know. And if you have not seen Leon or as it's called, The Professional here in the States, I highly fucking recommend it. The relationship between the two main characters, it borders on kind of strange now, and I think in terms of how it's aged is a little weird. But it's very 90s.
Jean Reno, famous star of
Thank you.
Famous star of the Godzilla remake, or supporting star of the Godzilla remake, Jean Reno.
Just can't get a good cup of coffee in New York.
Leon, the Professional, is a movie that let's see here. Much like the movie Milo and Otis, watching the movie, you might enjoy it. Once you start looking into the history of the production, in which Luc Besson was dating from what I understand, underage girl, or a girl who definitely
really
super looked under it. Yeah.
Well, man.
Yeah. One of those. Yep.
Well, everyone, I'm sorry. These are things I did not know.
Yeah,
I got to start looking into that.
It is a really well-made film with a really incredible performance by Gary Oldman, and then there are some really problematic items.
Oh, such a good villain, though.
Oh, so good.
Such a good villain.
Everything! Like, just one of those, super good.
Now, it is most Gary Oldman.
Yes, no, yeah. Gary Oldman at his most Gary Oldman, who also will be on coming up in David Fincher's next movie, Mank, which comes out next month.
Looks fascinating.
Oh, looks fantastic, and I want to let any reviewer who's gotten an early copy know that if you've seen Mank already, I hate you so much. I have so much envy deep in my heart and soul that I have not been able to see Mank yet. I want to see it so bad, but I guess I have to wait to December like the rest of us.
For now, you'll just have to settle for them.
Indeed. Now, something we should talk about this. This, much like Fargo, is a movie that starts up with the headline, based on true events. And
a very problematic line that a lot of films like to use to get butts in seats.
Yes. That said, there's not really a whole lot of evidence to back up like that this specific story is based on a specific true story. My understanding is it's more of like based on actual events, kind of in quotes, where it's based on several things that
tons of
probably
people have had people break
happened.
into their homes and fuck with them.
Yes, no, absolutely. And the thing that, and we're just going to, and we've talked about this before, and we'll say it again, this is a podcast where we are going to spoil the movie that we are talking about.
Though, I mean,
there's not much to spoil.
There's not much
in this
to
movie.
spoil. Yeah, no. Like, also, the things that, like, for example, you look at the box cover art, which also there were. I do remember that there was another. It had a tagline that was similar to The Wailing.
You'll never feel safe in your home again. Is the one on the box.
Anyway. The one on the box, but I do remember seeing one that was very similar to that, and all I could think was all over the place.
Yeah, and the cover art is very much an homage to one of the films that we reviewed earlier, Zombie. The eyeball scene in that is almost directly what the poster of this movie is, just sans
which I
set
gotta
a needle.
say did not deliver. Because there is, like, for this movie, you kind of expect a home invasion film to have a lot of gore, to have a lot of violence. Strangely enough, this film has very little of either of those.
It's not a very...
it's thrilling. It's very thrilling.
Yes.
But it is not heavy in gore. It's not heavy in violence.
I think it's closer to something like Panic Room, where it's one of those things where, like, no,
Yes.
that movie's not, like... The movie is not wet. There are a lot of wet horror movies where there's just so much blood and gore. But in this, there's not, like, because there's so few characters, there's not really a lot of, like, oh, super badass kills, bro. Or, like, oh, you're, like, or Dead and Buried, where you have that needle scene where you're just like, ah!
Yeah. But even in the opening scene of this film, when it's the mother and her very stuck-up daughter, going through their own little thing, and they crash, and she has to fix up her car so they can go, like, and the killers take care of them. But there's not a single drop of blood. You just see it's suggested that she's being choked to death in the car, and that's it. Like, the mother disappears out of nowhere, and you never see what happens to her. Everything is, most things in this film are suggested.
Yeah, suggested, implied, yeah.
Which is why I thought it was weird that, like, why are you trying to sell this eye scene when really it's just like she looks in and they try to get her eye and it just glances off the side of her face and she's more shocked. It just didn't seem poster worthy.
I mean, yes. I think it's a good image. It's one of those, I think you'd have to ask the poster artist who came in. Like, it might just be that they love Zombie and it's an arresting image, and hey, if it makes a good poster and it gets somebody to rent your movie. I mean, I'm a guy who grew up in the 80s, and man, let me tell you, looking at those posters, a lot of times what's on the poster or what's on the box.
More interesting what the actual film is.
Yeah, there's often the poster is way better than anything that's in the movie. But with this movie, I think one of their greatest strengths is how much they do with how little, and how kind of real they make a lot of this. Like, one of the things that I really like about this is that the couple is not a bickering, angry couple who spend the first part of the movie letting you know that they're going through a bunch of stuff.
No,
and
they're very, very happy.
Yeah, and it's shot mostly documentary style in order to bring you into their intimacy, to bring you into their environment.
It literally lets you spend a day with them.
Yes, and then, like, literally the plot of this movie is two people are killed in a car, and then two people are at home and they are attacked by them. And that's pretty much the plot of the whole movie.
Usually that would be my like small couple sentence summary, but like that's about as simple as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
It is a home invasion film where a loving couple is preyed upon by an unknown killer or killers.
Now, the big thing that separates this movie apart from almost every other home invasion movie is the quote-unquote twist, which
wasn't much of a twist.
Isn't even really a twist. It's more of an interesting reveal, which, spoilers, it's kids. Like...
children.
Yep. And goes
the
up... the
scariest thing of all.
Well, like, one of the great things that they do is they how scary they are able to make kids in hoodies and this weird sound that there's
a couple of sounds that they make.
Well, the sound, like
the howling was the weird one. I don't think they ever really explained what the howling was.
Well, what it comes down to is the sounds are being created by kids' toys. It's one of these like spinny clacker sounds, or I think it's like a whistle for the howl. And the idea is
oh, is that what it was?
That's what I believe it is. But yeah, the whole idea is what's scary about this is that it is just kids, just spooking people wearing hoodies. And a lot of the anxiety, or a lot of this movie comes from, and like the true story that they talk that this is based on, and let's be clear, true story in quotes, is the murder of an Australian couple that happened in Czechoslovakia.
Austrian.
Oh, sorry, Austrian couple, yes,
yeah.
Who was married in Czechoslovakia, or sorry, who were in Czechoslovakia and were married by married. I don't know why I just said married like twice. Who were killed. Completely different.
Very, very different.
Yes, no, that was a weird thing.
Though I would watch that movie.
Yes, no, absolutely. But
like killed by the person who married them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but basically there is an epidemic of Romanian homeless children, and this, from the research that I have been able to do so far, is based on the fact that they had just an absolutely horrifying authoritarian leader for a long time who kind of wrecked the economy and killed a bunch of people in war crimes. And as a result, there's a bunch of kids who don't have parents running around the street trying to be alive, and they are doing stuff that you do when you're trying to be alive and you're a child and you're living in a war-torn country.
Humanity!
Yay!
Sometimes the scariest thing is ourselves.
And if you have seen the movie Hostel, the roaming band of kids there is loosely based on the same problem, we shall say, epidemic. But this movie doesn't really this movie doesn't get into any of that, and I think I
would almost say that that's what the true story that this is based off of.
Yes,
in the sense that these children of the Roma people have had to resort to some fucked up things in order to survive and or make sense of their predicament in life that they pretty much inherited from just the abuse of their people over a very long, extended period of time.
Yes, and the crimes in this movie, like we said, are very likely... It is very unlikely that there are a handful of these Roma kids who were using kid clacker toys and noisemakers to torment a French couple. I don't think that ever happened. I think this is more based on the true story of, hey, did you know that the street kids sometimes do crime? And I bet you if you look at a long enough history, sooner or later, a couple of them probably killed somebody in a house somewhere. I'd be willing to make... I believe that was true, but the specifics of this event, from everything that I have found and everything that I have read, and even the Wikipedia says nah, there's not really any hard evidence that this happened. Something remotely like this might have happened, but not this specifically.
Yeah, and it's what I also found interesting. It seems to really want you to buy into that. That's how it was, because at the end of the film, just before the credits, they tried to give you a small play-by-play of what this was based off of, And even then, like trying, like I'm just really, I looked for a while trying to find this story because like it seemed fascinating. Because the idea was that they were saying that this couple was killed, and then the police found these kids, and they were eventually arrested. And they asked them why they did it, and their reason that they gave was that they wouldn't play with us.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't come across that.
Yeah, it's the little end of film.
Oh, that's right. It's the very blurb at the very end.
Like they wouldn't play with us, or they something of that particular saying. I think that's exactly how it was. And so I'm like, oh well, that's chilling. And but also too, like kind of what we were talking about with Roman people. Like it's in doing a little bit more research. There has always been tension between France and a lot of other European Union countries and Romanians, more specifically the Roma people. And so a lot of reviews then that I looked up about this film in particular, was that it is rife with xenophobia and quite a bit of racism, in the sense of like, oh, this is almost like you could compare this to a propaganda film about how Romanians are just born to be killers and how the Roma people, or as, ignorant people would call them, Roma gypsies, are just, naturally fucked up people. When really, what it was is like, because this film came out in 2006, and around this time, France was dealing with this whole thing where it was there's a little bit more expansion with the European Union at the time in 2006, and France was getting a little, anxious about the expansion of the European Union and also the multiple people that came with it, meaning that they had to welcome all sorts of foreigners and immigrants into their country, and the Roma people were the ones that they were particularly not fond of, and unfortunately, right now in our current events happening, is that we now have a bit more of a conservative, right-wing-esque government going on in the European Union that is very anti-immigration and very get the fuck out of my country if you don't look like me or talk like me, and you just kind of see this sort of thing getting worse and worse and worse. And so I do find this interesting. It is very much a deep dive into kind of like when we were talking about The Wailing and the relationship between Japan and Korea. It's just a film like this, which seems very simplistic. Actually, if you take a deep dive into kind of what is the genetics of it, you find it's ripe with history, and it really is just a portrait of the human condition and our need to portray somebody who's different as the enemy.
I would say, yes, it's very... so John Carpenter had a quote where he said that like there are two approaches to horror. The conservative take on horror is the bad guy is the other. It is the them. It is the person that comes in from the cold. It is that you are sitting around a campfire and you say that the most dangerous people, where the fear comes from, is from the other tribe, the other people, the people who are not like us. Where leftish horror is the horror comes from within. The evil comes from within. Mm-hmm. What the moral of the story is, you are just as capable of the bad things as the other people. And this definitely is much more of a right-wing approach, because the them is definitely the other. Now, I will say, unlike The Wailing, this movie has a lot less explicit text, I will say, dealing with race and the Roma people and the French. All of that is something that you kind of have to look into. You have to find on the Wikipedia page. You have to do some digging to find out. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this story is not fueled by that, but it is also not explicitly about that. I think this movie would play for any shitty right-wing audience that sees the other as the bad.
Yeah, like I see a lot. Which there was a reviewer that I was reading, and he claims to be coming from a very like liberal progressive point of view, which is kind of like I've been wanting to watch this movie for a long time, and then I realized kind of what this was. And he was talking about the role of the two main characters, Clementine, and what was her husband's name?
Clementine and
Raul, I think.
I believe so. Let me double check.
Like something around that nature. But the idea is that Raul, who's this journalist, is sort of
Clementine and Lucas.
Yeah. Okay, Lucas. Sorry. Lucas, who is a journalist, is sort of the propaganda person, and whereas Clementine is the colonizer, trying to force the French language onto the certain group of people. And the idea that it was a very interesting take, and I'm just like, okay. And then I started doing, and that's what caused me to be like, I got to look into this whole Romanian French relationship here, and but at the same time, it caused me to take a deep dive and learn a little bit. But it was the idea, like even in the beginning of the film, when you see Clementine talking to one of her other co-workers, other teachers. Talks about how the class is actually very unruly and doesn't really behave that well.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, okay.
And so, and the understanding is like when it's finally revealed that it's kids that are the killers, and at the end, after the couple is killed, the kids come out of their underground lair, or
the tunnels,
where they play, where they play, and they head towards the school bus to go to school. So it's implied that they're at least most likely her students.
Now that's all right. So so they definitely do get on a bus at the end. I always, because I've seen this movie before, and I always remembered it as a school bus. But then this time watching it, I noticed that when the bus pulled up, people got out, and then the kids got on, which to me
that is true.
implies
I did notice that too.
That it's much more like maybe they're on their way to school, and and everything that you just brought up before, I think is actually like some details that I hadn't noticed or put together before, but make total sense, especially if you're looking at if you're just trying to get your mind around what this movie is, or if you're looking for layers that and I don't. Both David and Javier, the directors of this, I haven't met them. I don't know them, and there's not a ton of interviews with them. There's not a ton of special features available for this movie. So finding out what they were thinking at the time, and with if this is one of those this is something we grew up around in. It's not something because it's not implicitly in the text. They do not. This movie very easily could be straight up propaganda with the addition of a couple of lines very specifically citing these kids as Roma. Mm-hmm. But that really doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It is implied that maybe
it's not hit you over the head. This is what it is. It is more like you could be this.
Yes, it is much more implied. So I don't know which way. It is definitely right leaning. It is definitely a movie about the scariness of the others. It is definitely a movie that once you look into the context of what was going on and when it was made, a lot of not quite red flags, but definitely ooh, wait, what does that mean? But I will also say it is not a movie that is overt with any of those themes, and as a result, I think that just changes what this movie is a little bit, in the fact that, it would be very easy for this movie to be an incredibly hateful propaganda movie that I would be now apologizing to David for making him watch.
No, which is just but it's I find it interesting that that's one of the takes.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
But the thing is, it's not obvious, and the fact is that they actually shot this film in Romania, so why would you be shitting on the Romanian people or the Roma people while you're also while they are being hospitable to you and letting you actually shoot in their country? Doesn't seem to match up too well with the.
But yeah, as two white guys from America who haven't been to Romania or France. Please, if we are also missing,
one can't even eat cheese.
Yeah. If we are missing something, hit us up on the Twitters, on the Instas. Let us know what we are missing, because one of the things that both this movie and with The Wailing 2 weeks ago, suddenly are finding ourselves. We suddenly find ourselves learning all this interesting cultural information that I don't have a degree for that. David does not have a degree for that. Like, so we are trying to find our way through it.
The bare minimum is I'm like a history minor in the sense of like, cool, like also like I've studied Russian history. Oh. It is very, very complicated.
Oh, yes.
And very in-depth, and a lot of names that all, like, a lot of very similar names.
I will take basic understatements for 1,000, David.
Straight. But, like, I know.
Russian history is complicated.
That's the quote of the day. Russian history. It's complicated.
Complicated stuff.
And cold. It's complicated and cold. But like one of the other interesting things was that, you know, when you were showing me this to pick from, and like, you know, Ken will show me the trailers for the two movies that we watched. It was this one, or it was A Tale of Two Sisters that I had to choose from. And I thought this seemed a little bit more. This seemed different from what we've watched previously. I'm like, cool. I'm going to go with different. One of the things in the trailer is it compared it to a movie that was kind of big a foreign movie that was kind of big at the time, Wolf Creek. Mm-hmm. And I found that curious because Wolf Creek is a fucked up movie.
Oh, that is a very wet, stabby.
That is and it is also a very rapey movie.
Oh yes, that is.
And that is one of those movies where I'm like, this makes me like, this is chilling and makes me uncomfortable. Like, it scares the shit out of me, which is kind of like. So I think it's a good movie.
It's gross is the difference, I think.
Yeah, it kind of, because like this was around the age where torture porn was really big. When I say torture porn, I'm talking about Hostel. Like movie.
Saw, Passion of Christ.
Saw, Passion of Christ.
I'm sorry.
We just love to see people get the shit tortured out of them.
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry if anybody's offended by that, but I'm sorry if you want to talk about what the definition of torture porn is by the people who want to use the term torture porn, which is not really a term that I think is good, because like I would argue that the Hostel movies are actually pretty good for what they are. There are definitely some.
The first part is literally just a Pornhub movie, and the other half is...
Yes, but it also is the perfect, like, that...
The Foreigner.
That Pornhub opening is the perfect lure for a shitty 18-year-old kid who doesn't know who still believes in this fantasy.
Well, you also had movies like Road Trip that were really big at the time.
Yes.
And so this was the horror movie version of Road Trip.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's... Hostel is, I think, something like Saw is much more straightforward of like, okay, roll your eyes. Hostel, I think, has a lot more to... Like, don't get me wrong, the Saw movies are fun, if that's what you're in the mood for.
Who realized that Wesley from Princess Bride was such a terrible actor?
That is, his performance in the first Saw is arguably a war crime. It is...
It's so bad.
It is so...
Don't get me wrong, I love the actor. He seems like
Cary Elwes is...
He gave us Princess Bride, and
he did. And he's been good in other things, but he is not good in Saw. Hostel is, I would say, is an interesting movie because, like, it plays with a lot of problematic elements, but it's also playing with, like, 18-year-old kids who just graduated from high school or college, whichever one, I forget it is, who are going to Europe to try and...
Put some miles on their soul and
their
dick.
Like, the movie does not try to make you think that either of those guys are good guys. They kind of go out of their way to be like, yeah, these guys are kind of like...
Horny pieces of shit.
Yeah, you might identify with them if you're like an 18-year-old horny kid, but like, you're not like... The movie is never like, look how awesome these guys are.
Look how cool Americans are.
Yeah.
No, we're very pathetic, and oftentimes we are the ones that bring a party down.
Yeah, no, and like also interesting things about Hostel. I believe it still holds this title, but it has the most foreign dialogue of any movie in the most languages without subtitles. So it is a movie that very much plays on your xenophobia. Mm-hmm. Like, it is a movie that definitely makes you feel what it's like to not know what's going on in the room.
So why then do you think that this movie was... Why do you think this specific reviewer compared this movie to Wolf Creek? Because those two seem like arguably very different, very, very different films. And I don't know why you would think to compare the two.
Well, I mean, the pull quote is the scariest film since Wolf Creek. So to me, it's so this movie is small, as we said. Like, it is a minimalistic movie.
Shot on digital, right?
Shot digitally.
It looks like 28 Days Later.
In 30, it looks way better than 28 Days Later. I have a Blu-ray copy of 28 Days Later, and that is a movie that looks like it was shot on
a video camera.
On video camera in the 90s. It looks rough. Like,
still so good though.
No, it's great, but it looks rough. This movie looks like a really solid documentary. It looks like a really well shot documentary. A lot of the inside stuff is done almost entirely with practical lights and
a real house too.
In a real house, basically.
Which the dilapidated look of the house, I think, definitely adds to the tension and adds to the scariness of it.
So one of the things was when they wrote this movie, they realized that they had to find a house that matched the script. Because otherwise, as soon as they got their location, they were going to have to massively rewrite everything. For just simple stuff like the bedroom needs to be at the end of the hallway. The kitchen needs to be down the stairs. This room needs to be across from this room. So what they did is they found actually a large manor, and they took over the entire thing. They built out some of the construction stuff on the side, and then part of the house became their production office, and then the rest of the house became their shooting location. Okay. So they were able to shoot everything in 30 days.
Fuck, wow.
And as a result, they were pretty much all in that one location, or they were just in the woods just outside. And then, like, the tunnels that they built, some of them were, from what I understand, available locations. And then, like, the big tunnel at the very end that's going past the cars drive past, that was a set that they built. They built that tunnel out.
Oh.
And, interestingly enough, so, let me back up. The actress in there's...
The one who plays Clementine.
Yes. There's a lot... both of the actors admit in the BTS that a lot of this movie wasn't really acting. Because they were shooting DV, because they had to shoot as much as they did as fast as they could, and because both of them were almost in every single scene. Every single shot after the opening, one of these two actors is in it. So there's no real time off. And they're together through most of the movie. And it turns out that the main actress, is claustrophobic. So really was not having a great time the entire ending of the movie in all of the tunnels. The other interesting story,
poor woman.
Yes, is she suffers from vertigo, as does the main, as does the director. I believe it's David. Also has vertigo. And when they were talking about some of the scenes, and particularly the latter scene at the very end,
yes,
she was like, "I'm pretty uncomfortable doing this because I have vertigo and I don't like being any place up high." And the director was like, "Don't worry, I have vertigo too. So I will do any stunt that you have to do first in front of you to show you that it's going to be okay and safe because we want you to be safe." And so they got to the ladder sequence at the end. Director went up the ladder to show how safe it was, and one of the ladder rungs pulled out and he fell, and he didn't break his hand, but he sprained it pretty severely. And at that point the actress was like, "So go ahead and call up a stunt rigger, because I'm not doing this without a harness, because you just went to show me how safe this was, and now I'm a little bit traumatized that I just watched the director just like climb 15 feet up and then just BAM!
To be fair, that's a whole lot more than Quentin Tarantino did for fucking Uma Thurman.
This is true. This is very true. But I think you find a
better
lot...
him than her.
I think you find a lot... I think you can see the realism that they were going for, that documentary style. Yeah, there's a lot... There's a visceralness to this movie that I think comes from, and I'm not saying putting the actors in danger. That's bad. Don't do that. I think it's from the fact that they had to move so fast that, you know, a lot of times when they look tired, it's probably because they've been running around for like 12 straight hours. Mm-hmm. When she looks claustrophobic in that tunnel, it's because she is claustrophobic in that tunnel, and
exhausted,
and absolutely exhausted. And I think that's something that adds, because like separating it from all of the problematic regional things that we have discovered while researching this movie, I think this movie is a really good technical textbook for how to do two people being chased around a house and keep it sustainable.
Yeah. Well, and it's just also, too, the elements of, as everything starts up, like, you spend a whole day with these two people. So, like, the film does a very good job about giving you an idea of what kind of people they are. Also, the idea, like, giving the film credit for them being a loving couple who genuinely want to be where they are. And don't seem to be discontented in anything that they're doing. Work might be hard, but that's about it. But then when things start up, it does seem to be coming out of nowhere, which is very much the case for when something like this happens to somebody.
Well,
they're living their normal life, and then something comes in and just completely just fucks with them. And it starts a little subtle at first, like it's like a phone call, somebody calls and hangs up, which I always get, like, I get real chills sometimes when I get, like, unknown caller, and I pick up because my psychiatrist, when she calls, unknown caller pops up. But that's a whole other story. My psychiatrist is terrible at her job. But but it's just like when you get a call from unknown caller and you say hello, nobody answers, and then it just hangs up on you. I get uncomfortable. Like it's really chilling to me.
No, absolutely. And also, and this movie, again, it's the minimalism. It would be very easy to lean on that and have heavy breathing on the other side.
They don't do that.
Or they don't do any of that. Like the unknownness of the them is very scary, because like there's no, like, unless you're really picking up on those very like subtle hints at the beginning, which, as we've discussed also, may or may not actually be connected or true. That just might be
very subtle.
Yeah, very subtle. But like the scariest thing is, like, I don't know why some random person is breaking into my house. There's no reason. Where, like, I don't know, if I've been running a gambling ring and someone breaks into my house, well, it's probably because of the crime I've been doing. And that's why a person is breaking into my house. And now I have a motivation, and that makes it less scary. Well, where this is just like, there are people trying to get in. Why? I don't know. But they want to murder us, and that seems bad.
It's why Strangers still is one of the top home invasion horror films of the time, because what makes it so scary is when they ask the question, like, why the fuck are you doing this to us? You're like, because you were home. Mm-hmm. They're like, there's no one else around, but you were here, and we wanted to fuck with you. And now we're going to kill you.
Because you're here.
And it, like, once again, it goes back to
the funny games, the same way, where it's just like, we're going to murder you, cuz.
And that's the most terrifying aspect of some of these home invasion films is, like, there's no reason. There's no rhyme or reason. You can't explain what's happening to you. It's just cuz. It's lottery. And it's the same fucking case with this. Mm-hmm. At the end, you're like, why did you do this to people? They wouldn't play with us.
Yeah, or another interesting twist on that is like Panic Room, where yes, the antagonists of Panic Room have a reason for breaking into that mansion, which is that they know that there's a safe in there full of bearer bonds, but
the family who's living there, they have no control over.
Jodie Foster and Kristen Stewart do not know that it was there. So until about halfway through the movie, when they're like, hey, we want to really get in that panic room. And they're like, really? Can't we just be terrified in here and you leave? Because that's the whole point of a panic room. And they're like, well, no, the thing that we need is in there. And that's why
and you're like, fuck.
Yeah. Also, go see Panic Room if you haven't seen Panic Room. Panic Room is way better than so many people give it credit for. Also, if you are a film student, I want you to go to Amazon and I want you to order the 3 DVD set of Panic Room. It is film school in a box. You get to watch David Fincher literally direct actors. You get to watch him break down scenes. You get to see animatics. They have scoring sessions on there. They have interviews with all the actors. They talk about how that entire house was built on a soundstage and is 3 stories tall, and every single wall can be flown out. So it is a perfectly sound
As
structure.
a scenic carpenter, that sounds exhausting.
Yes, David, just express to our listeners for a moment how exhausting this set sounds to just conceive, let alone shoot in.
Now, were these metal framed walls? Because I imagine for structural reasons they probably had to be if it's 3 stories high.
There is a metal exterior frame that holds basically that holds it all together, and then literally, and mind you, this building has an elevator in it, multiple sets of stairs.
So it has to be functioning sets are they're a regular thing of movies. It's that's sort of like the case, but a full fucking 3-story building is insane.
A 3-story mansion where every single wall can be flown out, but also every single structure is sound.
There's literally being saying to the crew, or saying to the set carpenters, we want to put the camera here, but this wall is in the way. All I can see is every single crewman being like, fuck. So the process of removing that wall, also keep in mind, once that wall is removed and then put back, then you have to have the scenic painters come in and do all the touch-ups. And that is just in-fucking-sane.
Yeah. No, it is nuts. And it's also one of those things where, yeah, guys, it's not like you can say, all right, well, we're going to take out this wall, and that's going to make things slightly unstructural for a minute while we put this brace in, so let's clear everybody out. No, we're going to leave the dollies and the camera stuff, and, you got to lunch to do it. So, no, it's like the craziest Lego set where any piece can be removed at any moment, but you also have to be able to, put a bowling ball on it.
There was a... I was one of the carpenters I work with. He was telling this story about how he was working in this particular studio set, and one of the grips, or even just, I don't think it was a grip. I think he was a PA. He dropped this heavy C-stand, and it punched through the floor. Now the sound insulation is down there too. You want to know what's in the sound insulation? Lead and asbestos.
Oh, good.
So this was 1930s era studio insulation.
So good, safe stuff you should definitely
Which meant
breathe.
that they had to clear the entire fucking set for the rest of the day while the crew came in and cleared out all of the asbestos. It put production behind by 2 fucking weeks.
Oh my God, that's some...
This is the shit that a lot of filmmakers have to deal with, and this is the fascinating thing. It's just so much blood, sweat, and tears goes into the making of these films.
I worked on a music video once where we were shooting in an industrial warehouse, and in the very basement was this gigantic, what I believe was a motor to turn, I don't know, this was a motor that was
trying to
12 feet tall, just a huge industrial thing from the 20s or 30s to pull, I'm sure some...
this was used in the Titanic. Oh, yeah.
Or just to pull thousands of pounds of grain from one side of a silo to the other. Just one of those wow, they just don't make machines this big really anymore. It looked like an engine for a steamship. One of those things, in Titanic, when you see the pistons are 3 men tall, just huge. And... of course, we're shooting a music video, so they want everything to look super cool. So Art starts going in and starts setting up candles everywhere, and we start lighting stuff. And then I look down one of the little shafts that just one of the little separators, and I see a weird reflection, even though everything down there is black. And then I suddenly realize, oh my God, that's just oil and maybe gasoline down there, and literally had to sprint across the set. And mind you, I am a grip at this point. I am not the DP. I am not in charge. My job is to carry stuff around, and I basically had to be absolutely everyone stop. It's so much oil, so much gas. We're in the middle of a factory in the 30s that I'm sure has been discontinued for safety reasons. I don't know where any of the safety exits are, but for God's sakes, can we please not light any candles or put any fire on it? And thankfully, the director agreed with me. And
thank fucking God!
Yes, but it's one of those...
What was it? I have to know his reaction.
he was just like, what is what? And I was like, I think that's all oil down there. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like,
do you want to go look?
Yeah,
I'm
I'm not going with my flashlight. I was like,
there.
I don't know what else that could be. It's awfully black, awfully shiny, and awfully at the bottom of an industrial motor. So grease, oil, gasoline, those are the options, I think. Do we need the candles? Can we just light it with electric lights? Back a little bit. Please. Is that okay? And he was like, yes. Also, and then I believe he went and got into a huge fight with the production manager or he went and got... All I know is there was a lot of yelling.
Are you trying to kill us?
Yes, there was a lot of yelling that came from around the corner.
That's insane.
Yeah, where I was just like, I'm going to be over here, and I'm going to keep setting up my lights. And I did the Boy Scout thing. I was safe. I notified the right people, and now they are taking care of it. And I'm still here. That building did not burn down. We shot the music video, which was so long ago, I don't even remember what the name of this music video is. That's how long ago it was. But it is one of those safety things that comes along with making movies that sometimes people don't think about. It's very easy to get so excited with making a movie, and watch this, David, I'm going to bring this all around, right?
God,
sometimes you tell the actress, I'm going to go ahead and climb this ladder because it's totally safe. And then one of the rungs just pulls right out of the wall and you fall 15 feet right in front of her and you lose like half a day of production and you have to go get a stunt team because it's not safe. Because sometimes reality steps in when you're making movies and kicks you right in the teeth and or threatens to kick you in the teeth in case someone doesn't say, excuse me, sir, I believe this room is filled with what appears to be gasoline and oil. Can we not put fire in it? And sometimes those things work out, and sometimes those things don't. And luckily for me, it did. And I think on a lot of this movie...
Great fucking turnaround.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that was that was me bringing it all back. And with that, David, I think we are just about at the end of this particular episode, which means it is time for a little time travel where we're going to choose between two different movies.
Okay.
I'm going to show David two different movies. Mm-hmm. Now, unlike most weeks where it is either two movies that I've seen, and David chooses and he hasn't seen them. Sometimes we do a Freaky Friday and we flip the two. This one is kind of an interesting in between because the two movies that I have chosen, I have in fact seen, but it has been about 15 years or so. Mm-hmm. So I have only the vaguest recollection of what these movies are like. So I'm really looking forward to revisiting these this week and David giving me an excuse to do it. And those two movies that I've chosen, one is the Australian film Patrick, and the other is the Canadian film Ginger Snaps. So we're going to time travel for just a moment. I'm going to show David these trailers, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to tell you, David's going to tell you what the two movies look like, and then next week we'll review one of them.
What time am I setting this time machine for, Ken?
About 4.5 minutes. Beep, boop, beep, beep, boop, boop. All right, and engage. We have emerged yet again in the future.
Oh, it's very humid.
Indeed. Very humid. Very humid indeed.
Strange for December.
Yes. No. Now, so we have, well, it's November, so that's definitely even the strangest thing. Now, we have an option for you today between Canadian lesbian werewolves and Australian vegetables. So, first off, David, why don't you tell us what Patrick looks like to you? Patrick
looks very old.
Yes, 1978 Australian film, and the trailer we watched is rough.
Yeah, it also looks weird when somebody is trying to swing an axe into a door to get it open, but then Patrick's telekinesis looks like fart noises.
The movie is cut much better than that trailer is. I'm not going to lie, it is a 1978 low-budget Australian horror film, so it has got some rough edges. But it
looks like there's something there. Like it's one of those things. First of all, Ken, I trust you. Mm-hmm. You know, with the exception of some fish rape movies, you have not led me astray.
Yep, so far so good. I mean, I will say it is a favorite of Quentin Tarantino, and if nothing else, it is an important film in the history of Australian genre films. But I can also understand if it's not necessarily your jam. Now, question: What did you think about what did Ginger Snaps look like to you?
That is, for a film that was made in like 2000?
2000.
It is so 90s.
It is, well, it would have been made in the 90s.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the 2000s wouldn't have been a thing
it has got,
until it had been released.
It has got that 90s movie trailer that I am so nostalgic for. Mm-hmm. And had, like, it still shocks me that I haven't seen this movie. Like, I'm aware of kind of the themes.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I like looking at it, I'm like, I actually don't think I've really seen any of this footage.
It's not a movie that gets a lot of play, or like it gets a lot of like. It's not a movie that you find in a lot of like top 50 horror films of all time.
I think I even asked you about. I think they're turning Ginger Snaps into a TV show.
I believe so. That is what I've been reading.
Yeah,
that's what I'd read. I believe pre-COVID. I don't know if that's still happening.
It is, because I think Bloody Disgusting podcast. They were doing a thing on it. I think they're they're still going through with it, as well as HBO Max is apparently doing a Hellraiser.
Oh
series.
yeah, that's right. I heard about the Hellraiser.
Yeah, which Clive Barker is directly involved with.
That is a movie that I am excited for everyone who likes the Hellraiser movies for. Those movies,
First two are great, others are awful.
I don't enjoy watch. I understand why they are good. I think the effects are incredible. I do not enjoy watching the Hellraiser movies. They make me feel like I need to take a shower inside of my shower while showering. Like I need a loofah. I need like really strong soap. They just make me feel dirty. And no shade to anyone who likes them.
I have an original Clive Barker doodle inside my copy of The Hellbound Heart, and it is my most prized possession. I love Clive Barker so much.
Of course you do. But this is why we make an interesting match on this show, because we both like horror movies, but both in different ways. Yeah. So
I'm gonna go with Ginger Snaps.
You're gonna go with Ginger Snaps?
I'm gonna go with fucking Ginger Snaps.
All right, let's do it.
You know what? I'm gonna travel down the path that I should have traveled down a long time ago.
Lesbian Canadian werewolf movie. It is, David. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everybody on the spectrum, in between, all of our non-binary friends, it has come to the end of another episode, and so it has come for us to say goodbye. We will see you next week. We love you, all of you beautiful weirdos.
We love you so much, you sons of bitches.
See you later, motherfuckers.
Fuck you.